Attention New York City listeners, I'm excited to share 2 upcoming live This Is Taste tapings that I think you're going to like, taking place at Rizzoli Bookstore in Manhattan's Flatiron District. On April 8th, I will be joined by Barbara Costello, better known through her Brunch with Babs social accounts. We will be talking about her brand new cookbook, Cooking with Babs. And on May 5th, I will be joined by photographer and journalist Craig Maude for a reading and conversation about his debut memoir, Things Become Other Things. I love this book so much and welcome you all in to hear his story about walking around Japan and so much more. Tickets are available at the Rizzoli website, rizzolibookstore.com. I hope to see you there.
It's very tricky because it's very emotional and we don't have a controlled environment. The kitchen itself, we don't even have like a real proofer. Everybody that makes donuts, nobody had made donuts before. Nobody's gone to cooking school. I wanted to do a donut that you're connected to instinctively.
Yeah.
And that's hard to teach.
This is Taste. I'm your host, Matt Rodbard. Today on the show, I welcome in Fany Gerson. Fany is the chef-owner of a diverse roster of New York City places for food, including La Newyorkina, famous for ice cream and paletas, and Fan Doughnuts, which was recently named a James Beard semifinalist. On this episode, we talk about Fany's amazing career, her many cookbooks, and talk about what it's like to run a restaurant during these tumultuous times. Fany is one of my favorite people in food, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Fany Gerson, welcome to This Is Taste. It's great to have you back.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back. I'm excited to be here.
I loved our last conversation. It wasn't me. It was my former co-host, Anna Hazel, was there, and it was a great conversation. I'm going to link to that in the show notes, but many more things to talk about with you. First off, I have to ask chefs on the show, when you're not working, where are you dining out?
I think it goes like in seasons. Like sometimes I crave like something. I feel like it's a combination of, I haven't been to XYZ. But I would say the last few months in particular, like my husband and I are going and taking our son to Queens, like sort of on a discovery kind of thing. And it's hard because you love these places, you want to go back, but we're always, my son loves dumplings. Like he's just, he's 6 years old and he could have dumplings every single day. So we do a lot of that. And I also, in this time of year, like I am very nostalgic for Mexican food, where I'm from. I don't know why specifically. So we've gone a lot to Sobremasa and Taqueria Ramirez and El Submarino. So just hitting all our favorite Mexican spots.
Yeah, this time of year, it's not like a holiday thing, is it?
No.
Is it the weather? It's so different from, maybe it's like that contrast.
Yeah, I think it's maybe sort of that yearning to be in a warm place, warm environment.
Yeah, that's it.
Happy place. So Mexican food, it does that for me.
On our last episode, we didn't get into this, but I'm really curious, your time at the CIA in culinary school and then working an externship. What was that time like for you at the CIA? What were you drawn to? Was it pastry? And where did you start your career?
Yeah, so when I went to CIA, it was a very different sort of world in terms of students. Like there were very few women.
Yeah.
There were very few foreign students. We all knew each other. Literally, it was probably like maybe 30 at most from different parts of the world. And now if you go there to the CIA or many other schools, you just see a much more diverse, many women, so that was very different. I also, as a foreigner, I did my externship at the end of the program. So where, my classmates, they went in the middle of the program, but because of the visa situation, you had the choice. And so I decided to just went through school. So I had sort of 2 different sets of classmates. Mm-hmm. And that was amazing. And I ended up going to Spain, to San Sebastian, to the Basque country to do my externship. But I actually did the savory. Before I went to CIA, I went to school in Mexico, like to cooking school, because I told my parents that's what I wanted to study. And back then, it was also, there were, I think, 2 cooking schools in all of Mexico City. There were, I think, 5, like tourism that had some cooking as part of it when I started out. And again, I didn't know any female chefs. I didn't see it as like a career. And my parents did not want me to study cooking.
What did they want you to do?
They wanted me to study art.
Oh, okay. You didn't get the doctor lawyer thing, but you got,
Exactly.
but food was not on the radar.
And I said, but at least this is an art I'm not going to starve in, you know?
This is like the reverse of most stories. You're like, I don't want to be a starving artist. I want to make food and sell it and make money.
And they're like, no, because they knew sort of the sacrifice that it meant, that most people that start in this industry don't end up in the industry. And the sort of like, well, everybody's has holidays, you're working, and all of those things that I don't even know how they actually knew, because they don't have sort of, they weren't part of they were intellectuals. Yeah. So that was not, so art fit into that and cooking.
Yeah, they wanted like an artistic daughter to be doing like studio art, and it was good for their intellectual friends. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
You know, probably there was part of that. Okay. But anyway, so I when I went to school in Mexico, they said, okay, go here, do an associate's degree, and then, you know, but they thought I was just going to get out of my system and then go into art. And I actually did apply here, and I was going to go to the School of Visual Arts. I loved it. I had a scholarship that they offered me, partial scholarship, and I was going to do art education and graphic design. And then I had one day where I could go see another school. So I was either going to go to RISD or to the CIA. And when I went to the CIA, but I had made up my mind. Yeah. And when I went to the CIA, I can't explain it. Like, I felt I belonged there. Like, just driving in from the train in the cab, I was like, this is something I could never even imagined. And so it was an amazing experience. And I knew I wanted to do pastry. But when I was in school in Mexico, I worked at the Four Seasons there in Mexico City, and that's where I did my externship. And the chef, the general manager called me one day and said, so I hear you're going to go to the CIA and you're going to do the pastry program. I'm like, yeah, I want to specialize in pastry. And he's like, no, you can't do that. Why? I was like, whoa. And he's like, because you need to have a solid foundation before, and going to school here, I mean, it gives you some foundation, but you need more. Because if tomorrow, let's say you go there and you're tired of making pies, what are you going to do with it? You're not going to have a lot of, I mean, he was like exaggerating. Yeah. But he convinced me to go into the savory. So I did the savory side, and all my pastry experience came not from school, but from actual work. I just kept staying in the...
Your natural instinct continued, and you...
Continued, but I actually loved doing the whole culinary program, and I loved, learning about charcuterie. And so it's more like, do I really have to choose? And I always say I'm kind of like the anti-pastry chef in many ways. Most pastry chefs are very methodical and very sort of, it's more of an exact science, and that's not my approach. My approach is much more sort of like the savory chef, A
little more art over science side of it, though. Of course, you have your recipes and your
but it's more just connected to how you feel and those kinds of things. So I actually love that. I thought it was the best advice, and I'm glad I listened to him.
Tell me about the Basque region. What were you cooking up there, and did you start cooking pastry there?
No, so I worked in a restaurant called Aquelarre, and it was my best job, quote unquote job I've ever had. And it was, like one of the top, there's like 5 top restaurants in San Sebastian. And I discovered seafood there. I wasn't really much into like fish or seafood except for shrimp growing up in Mexico. But there it was just like they would bring these just... We didn't even know what they were bringing.
Turbo.
They would fish in the middle of the night. Yeah. We could see the boats, and they would come. And I remember like there was this calamari that arrived that was like a 10-foot calamari, like humongous. And that wasn't just once; it was like all the time. And and I had to, as part of the program, I had to rotate in different ones. And actually, when I went there, because I looked at the CIA, they had someone who would help you connect with restaurants. And I said, I want to go. Originally, I wanted to go to Belgium to learn about chocolates. And he said, no, like, you have to do something savory. You can't.
I got it. Yeah.
And so he said, what about, and I wanted to do something overseas. And then he said, oh, well, this one. Oh, there's this place here, but no, they don't take women. And then he kept going. I said, wait, can you go back to that one? Yeah. And so that's the one I ended up sending a letter and convincing them. Amazing. I don't know why they didn't, but.
How do you end up in New York then?
I used to go to a camp upstate New York.
Okay.
In the Adirondacks growing up, and I just always loved New York. I just had this fascination. I love the arts, and I just loved that, you could literally sit on a bench and just watch people, and it's just the most interesting thing. And that people were very sort of individuals, like they were themselves, and they were interesting, and no matter what. And so I was always just drawn to that New York energy. And so after school, I came back to New York, but I never came back with the intention of I'm going to set roots here or I'm going to be here for a few years and then come back. It was just like, I want to be in New York. And before I knew it, it has been over 20 plus years.
20 plus years.
20 plus. I stopped counting it.
What are the early kitchens you were working in New York?
I worked at 11 Madison Park when it was still owned by Danny Meyer.
Okay. Was that under Carrie Heffernan?
Yep. Yeah. It was under Carrie, and it was amazing. It was just like the most beautiful place to work. I worked at La Côte Basque.
Oh, wow.
Remember? Like that was...
Of course I remember. Tell me, our listeners might not remember La Côte Basque, but what was it like? What was your cooking there?
La Côte Basque was like this quintessential French, classic restaurant in New York. There was a guy, his only job was to do souffle. Like, that's it. That was, and it was just amazing. And, Chef Rashu was just like that stereotypical, didn't speak a lot of English. And when he did, it was like very heavy. And it was just amazing. It was not reinventing the wheel, but doing everything perfect.
Yeah. And so when did you get the entrepreneurial bug? When was that moment? Because like your career is really fascinating to me in the best way possible, because you clearly are understanding product market fit. You're like offering things that people want in New York. You've got a paletas company, you've got a donut company, you've got a Mexican restaurant that I need to go to. I haven't been, so I can't speak about firsthand.
Yeah.
And clearly you're thinking about concepts that sell, that work, versus your restaurant and only your restaurant, right?
I always say, like, I feel like I became an entrepreneur by default.
Okay.
It was, so for many years when I was living here, I had visas. That's how I was able to live here and work. And I hated that. I hated that because the way the visas work, for those who may not know, is like you get a visa for a certain period of time, a year or 2 years at most. I mean, even if you like it and you want to stay there and grow there and have these mentors, you can't, because the visas don't allow, just don't allow you to do that, to extend it. You have to get another one. But also the ones that you don't have, like if you're miserable in a place, like you feel somebody owns you. So for many years I was just like, and I finally, after many, many years, I got my green card. And then I went to Mexico for a year-long trip to do my research for my first cookbook, My Sweet Mexico. And when I came back, I knew like that whole experience changed me. And I know it sounds corny, but to me, I felt like I wanted to do something to continue celebrating the sweetness of Mexico. So I had many different ideas of what that would look like. And I would call my dad and I would say, hey, what about doing this? And originally I wanted to do like a confection shop.
Okay.
And my dad would say, no, that's not going to be a business. And his approval was very important to me. And so one day I literally had a dream that I was going to open a Mexican ice cream shop in New York. And so I called him up. I said, okay, I have this idea, and this time I don't care what you say, you know. Of course I cared.
Yeah.
And he said he was very quiet for like a minute. He said, we're going to have to figure out what to do in the winter, but I think that that's a great idea because it's a very noble way to introduce people to flavors from other countries, and most countries have a version of ice cream. And so that's something that is comforting in their own way. And so I said, okay, well, why don't I start making paletas, which are Mexican-style ice pops, because finding a place that has an ice cream machine is going to be tougher. It's going to be more expensive. To buy one is too much. So I had 2 jobs at the time and 2 part-time jobs. And then I went to Mexico to get some molds. I'm like, where do you even get molds?
Yeah.
I had never made a popsicle in my life.
So you had the idea.
So I
never
had the
actually made
idea,
it.
but I had never made it. And a friend of mine, helped me that summer. Like once I realized we were going to call it Sticky Fingers
Okay.
at first, but there was a bakery called Sticky Fingers.
Yeah.
And I'm, it wasn't the right.
Yeah.
It wasn't the right.
The Rolling
either.
Stones might have a little thing to say about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was in a cab with a friend of mine, with 2 friends of mine, and on our way to a concert. And I said, I want to start this company. I'm going to be starting with paletas, but I want to do something else afterwards. What should I call it? So one of them jokingly said, why don't you call it La Neoyorquina? Because the most famous name for paleta shops in Mexico is called La Michoacana, which means the girl from Michoacan. And that year I had just turned 10. I was turning 10, which is when, at least according to Sex in the City.
Yeah, we follow
when
that.
You can.
You're official New Yorker.
You're official New Yorker.
10 years in New York.
So I was an official New Yorker, and I said, oh, yeah. He's like, no, I'm just joking. I'm like, no, that's a great name.
Yeah.
And so that's how it started out. It was really, it's never been about let's do this business plan and let's do the, and even in the flavors or the things that I put out, or it's things that I'm nostalgic about or I'm excited about. And the 3 concepts that I have are, what I consider to be in the category of like affordable luxury.
Yeah.
It's a luxury because it's not a necessity. But, like when you come to the donut shop, like I want people to feel like this is special, this is different, there's like a lot of love and intention. But you know how sometimes you go to certain pastry shops and they're beautiful. I'm not dissing them, but you feel like you have to be quiet.
Yeah.
Like it's very sort of, it feels exclusive.
Things are under glass, maybe? Like a little too
and
much
so that's not what I want for my businesses. I want, to feel like very welcoming, very sort of the extension of what I feel like, love Mexican hospitality.
I love affordable luxury. I say that all the time.
Oh, yeah?
I use that term constantly. Anyone listening to the show knows I say that. I talk about it with coffee. I think coffee is one of the greatest affordable luxuries. When you're paying $6, $7, it's affordable, but it's a luxury.
But it's like it's special. And I do love going to these, special bakeries and pastry shops that I'm talking about. That is not what I do.
But your vibe was much different.
But it's it's more like this is. I want everybody to feel welcome, and everybody that is, and it's still a luxury, right? But if, I don't want to feel like they can go in and they can't afford it.
I'm Nomi Fry.
I'm Vincent Cunningham.
I'm Alex Schwartz, and we are Critics at Large, a podcast from The New Yorker. Guys, what do we do on the show every week?
We look into the startling maw of our culture and try to figure something out.
That's right. We take something that's going on in the culture now. Maybe it's a movie, maybe it's a book, maybe it's just kind of a trend.
And we expand it across culture as kind of a pattern or a template.
Join us on Critics at Large from The New Yorker. New episodes drop every Thursday. Follow wherever you get your podcasts.
Let's focus on donuts. Now, you're a donut legend, like straight up. Like your work at Dough previously, and now your work at Fan. You're a semifinalist for the James Beard for donuts, which does not happen all the time. So I have to give you props for that.
Thank you.
My first question about donuts is, I had Wiley Dufresne in here, and he also was in the donut business. And he got to talk, and I want to get your take on this. Like, donuts are a miracle. They're one of the hardest things to make. I shudder at the thought of making donuts at home. I know there's plenty of cookbooks that try to say it. why were you drawn to the donut as a food that you were going to sell and win acclaim for?
So I can't take credit for coming up with the idea. It was actually a former boss of mine. He was French, and one day he called me up. It was a year that La Neoyorquina started, and so in the fall, by the time fall came, I had already quit my 2 jobs, and I just couldn't do it anymore. But then the paleta season was over, so he's like, "So what are you gonna do now?" I said, "I'm gonna figure out how to. I want to figure out how I can grow it, and I'm gonna look for some consulting or just a part-time job or whatever I can find freelance." He said, "Oh, how do you feel about, I have a spot." And he had a physical location in Bed-Stuy. He said, "I want to open a donut shop." And I said, and it's across the street from public housing. And he says, "I want to open," he says, "I don't understand, him being French." He's like, "Why there aren't more sort of handmade or, craft donuts, not, beyond when it's such a quintessential thing." And I said, "So here's a French guy and a Mexican girl trying to do the quintessential American treat in our minds."
Yeah.
And I said, "Let's just try it out. I have the place, I have the idea." And he was just a really good visionary. He said, "Just focus on making the dough." And that's where the name came from. And I said, "Okay." And he said, "If it doesn't work out, we'll do cookies or pies, or we'll figure it out, So I said, "Okay." And I had made a few donuts, in restaurants.
Like a few.
A few.
Yeah.
I had made also, I remember once I had, for Hanukkah, I had friends over, but it wasn't I grew up making the same thing with paletas, And I said, "Okay." So I tested. So we geeked out a lot about what we thought would make an amazing donut, about the texture and the flavor. But it's not that we were trying to recreate something from our childhood, because we both had donuts where we came from, but they weren't. But I actually felt very nervous about this. This is before sort of the word, what is it called? Appropriation was widely used. But the sentiment I felt, I said, but people have very close emotions to donuts.
We have a lot of feelings about donuts. I mean, it's a truly American product. We have these companies that sell frozen donuts all over the place that have Super Bowl commercials, and we know who they are. And we also have this tendency to think donuts need to be very cheap.
Yeah.
Very cheap. That's the tendency that they need to be $1 a donut.
And so I said, "Okay." Well, so I focused on literally just making the dough. And after several months, I said, I have it. So I called him up. I said, "Okay, I need you to come. I think I have it. I've reached what in my mind, I was trying to achieve. But I could be very different than what he was, because we weren't "Oh, let's try to recreate this kind of donut."
No.
At the time, I think it was only the donut plant that was doing,
of course, legends.
Legends. You had Peter Pan, which is very classic.
Very much.
But the donut plant was taking, let's say, a new twist.
We've had the peanut butter and jelly donut plant donut. The peanut butter and jelly is on the podium.
Yeah.
That's
and and even their cake, I love they have a Brooklyn blackout.
Oh,
one.
for
I
sure.
think it's fantastic.
Great.
So, anyway, so that's how it started out. And he tried it and he said, "Okay, we're opening in a week." So we started with a French fry fryer.
Oh, no.
Which is very small for a donut shop.
Yeah.
And we literally just opened the doors one day. And he also said, "Okay, now I want you to think about the glazes," because all that time, it wasn't about the flavors. It was we want to make sure that
texture.
The naked donut can stand on their own.
Yeah.
So that's what I focused on. And we opened maybe not a week later, but 2 weeks later. And I was craving, it was very cold out one day. And again, I was I'm craving my homeland.
Yeah.
And so I made myself hibiscus water, which is very traditional in Mexico. And I said, what if I turn this into a glaze? Yeah. And so that became one of our signature glazes when I had dough. And then we unfortunately had a very bad partnership that I can't really get into, but you can read between the lines.
Yeah, right. These things come to the end. These relationships. And,
And so I was able to reopen in the original dough space under Fan, and we opened in the middle of the pandemic.
Right.
But going back to like what makes like the donut, it's just tricky, and we don't have like even to this day. We still make the same way that I did since 2010.
From that
I mean,
French
it's
fryer.
a different recipe now.
Yeah.
We did have to buy
I would
a bigger
imagine.
fryer.
I would imagine.
Within like a month, we
Yeah,
had to buy
yeah.
a different fryer. But even the way of making it, because we were weighing the stuff, because it's different to make a batch of donuts at home and to do it as production. And we did know from the very beginning we wanted to have a fresh donut no matter when you went. So we do them in small batches. And it's not, most pastry shops and a lot of donut shops, they make like at night or early in the morning what you're going to have throughout the day, like bakeries. But we felt there was a big difference in making them throughout the day. So you're always going to get it.
Let me ask you, let's step back and talk about the technical elements here, the food science that's happening with the donut, because we don't appreciate it as much as we should, because we're talking about something that's fried. You're using like hot oil. Oil needs to be changed constantly. You're talking about something that has a really limited a window to make the fry work.
Yeah.
And that's just the actual technical element of frying it and getting it to the end. And of course, you get your glazes. But then like the dough part, getting that right.
Yeah.
Talk about like how difficult it is to make donuts.
So it is, like it's very tricky because it's very emotional, and we don't have a controlled environment in any way, shape, or form.
You mean
in
the
our
seasons matter?
The seasons matter. The kitchen itself, we don't even have like a real proofer. Like we don't.
You don't?
We don't. Like
Damn.
That's how sort of I started to learn. And then also everybody that makes donuts, nobody had made donuts before. Nobody's gone to cooking school. Nobody has sort of background. So I wanted to do a donut that you're connected to, kind of the way instinctively.
Yeah.
And that's hard to teach because at first you have to understand it. So the one thing that changes in our dough is the liquid. The liquid changes depending on how humid it is, how hot it is, but it's not like, oh, we have a chart. It's 70
this is
degrees
hydration
today.
you're talking about, right? The hydration.
Exactly. And so we make a Mexican cinnamon tea that goes into all our dough. So that's the first part, like getting the right amount of liquid. But again, you don't have a chart. After the first batch, like you have to feel it. Like, what does it feel like? And we use like fresh nutmeg. Because again, to me, all these little things add up. We could use regular nutmeg, but there's some really good ones out there. But again, I feel like all these things make a difference. So first, it's the actual making of the dough, feeling that it's right. And then as it rises, how do you, we have like a sheeter, which is this machine that helps us roll it out. But that doesn't do the entire work.
No.
It does part of the work so that they're as even. But then you have to we finish it by hand, like with the... You have to like caress it. I always like think of it as like a baby. You have to literally put your emotions in it.
Yeah.
Kind of like water for chocolate kind of things. And then we cut it. There's these sort of like rolling pins that act as like donut cutters that big places use. We don't use that. And there's also cutters that already has like the outer and the inner. We don't use those either. We cut literally the outside circle, the little circle, like thousands of donuts. We make them this way. Then they get put into a sheet pan. And then they get put into this cabin that has, again, it's not an actual proofer. And then you have to see when it's ready. And it has to talk to you because it can, if it's not ready, it might not be raw, but it's gonna affect how oily it is because it's something that's fried, but it shouldn't feel heavy.
That's the
or
trick,
oily.
right?
That's the trick.
And that's why making them at home is an impossible task, and why so many donut shops are industrial because they have their version of what a donut is. They make them in one state, they freeze them, and send them to other states. But like I love what you just said about the process because it is like making any pastry. This isn't just a donut.
No.
This is like pastry. Let's get real. And speaking of pastry, you created your own pastry, the Fan. It's like a hybrid, right? It's like a long I think like a Long John.
Yeah, it's not like It's not like a mix like the cronut is, but it
Oh,
is.
the Corona. Oh, yeah, that one.
But it's inspired by. So I had never had a Long John, and a friend of mine was like,
Really?
"Oh, my daughter, she just like loves Long Johns."
Oh, Midwest guy here. I had them.
Yeah, so I
growing up.
looked them up,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Oh, those are they're like." I said, I like the idea of it, of how you eat it, but they seem very, very big,
Yeah.
And I said, I love how you treat like an eclair, So I
Yeah.
said, how can I make, and I got some sort of cutters in France when I went, and in Paris, to be able to get the right, so they're the shape of an eclair, and the way sort of you think about eclairs are more like delicate. They're more, but again, keeping the fun. So that balance of
Yeah.
making it special and doing sort of, this is where I bring, in my donuts, I bring sort of like all the knowledge I had in pastry in the fancy restaurants, but bring him here in a place where, again, we don't have a control environment to do like tempered chocolates or anything like that. But to make, like really beautiful curds, we make our own jams. We make our own sprinkles.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and I don't like to use any colorings
Yeah.
or flavorings
natural
of any kind. All natural.
juices and-
But I love color. So when you come in, you'll see a lot of tropical flavors, which are obviously inspired.
having a really fresh curd with seasonal citrus or
It's just
other fruit. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's incredible. What does it mean to be long listed for the beards for a donut shop? What does that feel like?
I can't even believe it. Like the day I found out, I was like sick in bed with the biggest flu, and I got an email from someone, like a local news, and said, "Oh, congratulations, and can you send some photos?" And I was in the middle of writing like fake news, like I don't know, you heard
Like,
this.
who are you?
And then a friend of mine, was like, "Oh my god!" And I just, it means so much. I honestly don't have the right words to say, but particularly in it's sort of like you have so much hard work and intention and love, and it's collective. Like, this isn't just about me; it's about everybody that is part of the team, but also that has supported. But it's also, my donut journey has had a lot of ups and downs that I haven't, emotionally, with the partnerships and all of that. And I've tried to put that sort of on the side, like nobody, we're in the business of making people happy.
It's really cool that the James Beard Foundation recognizes donuts.
Yes.
Because I think if you listen to this far, you just heard what goes into making a donut. And I think that we sometimes get stuck in, like, fancy French plated desserts are like pastry, but donuts are not. But clearly they're the same.
Yeah, I think like there's so much that goes into, at least I can say, like, there's so much hard work and attention to, like I said, I could buy the jam, I could buy, if you could even buy the glazes, but every single donut that I made, like, has so much intention and so much, like, my husband is, probably my biggest cheerleader, and he feeds my crazy. And I love that, and I also, to me, once when I reopened the donut space and this new, for Fan Donuts, what I really I thought about a lot about what it means to be an immigrant and have a small business in a place like New York, like, New York is just so tough. I'm not even talking about the competition, but it's just so tough to have a business here in every angle that you can think of. And so I really wanted to, and I felt even what had happened to me in, like, the former partnership, that had to do with the fact that, I was uneducated in many ways, of what legal standpoint, like, I'm fluent in English, but it's still my second language, and you just think differently. So I really wanted to use the donuts as a canvas to explore and celebrate different cultures.
You bring up the word immigrant, and it just comes to mind. We hear this word, we read it in the news, and, as a Mexican American, the current political climate and the new presidential administration has directly targeted Mexican immigrants.
Yeah.
I would love to get your take, for the show about how you're feeling, how you're doing with this really this strong language being put out there and actions, of course.
Yeah. I mean, I feel very scared, to be honest. I feel very just like I'm an eternal optimist.
Yeah.
But
You
I
smile
am
a lot.
feeling
I can see it.
But I'm feeling quite pessimistic and it feels scary. I mean, all our staff is immigrant, not all Mexicans. I feel that having someone in leadership not just lie, but feed the lies and just, create all this hatred and all of this discourse. And, nobody talks about, I'm not saying nobody, but it rarely gets talked about, why so many people come here? Why are they here illegally? Does it, they're not here. Most of those immigrants that they're referring to come here to have a better life. They're escaping a terrible situation. Not even talk about what they did to be here or how much they contribute to society, how much they contribute to the economy that they're so worried about. And so just having this, negative and frankly disgusting and awful, like it's really upsetting. It's just, so I feel like and I feel helpless. I feel what can we do? And I felt, in a very different way, but in the pandemic, when, one of the first things that we started to think about was what's going to happen with all these undocumented workers. Because if there is aid, I remember a lot of friends were talking about, but the government has to give us money and they're going to have to help us out. And I don't know. I'm like, what? They're going to help us out? No. You can't just depend on the government to give you. But I said, even if aid comes, they're going to be forgotten. So the immigrants in this country make the economy in the country. Like they
Full
are...
stop. Full stop. Absolutely.
That's it.
Yeah.
So we not only don't take care of them, I mean, it is just we could go on.
We go on, and the dissonance there, obviously, from political rhetoric and the real talk and the real actions of our country. That dissonance will come into full picture as these new policies take shape and the economy suffers. It's obviously going to happen. And I would like to ask you, and thank you for sharing this because it's important. How do you speak to your staff who maybe don't have documentation, who maybe are here illegally? How do you speak to them? Because they're looking to you, I'm sure, as their boss, and you're a mentor to many. I know can you dig for optimism at all? And just in general, staying safe out there?
What I try to do is try to get informed, because there's a lot of misinformation on how we can best help. So, like the Mexican consulate, we have contacts there. Not everybody is Mexican, but they have at least the information. These are your rights. This is what you need to do. What can we do as employers? I contacted a couple of lawyers, to be like, look, if not just you, but anybody in your circle is affected, because this is a whole community. And so we have, there's an organization called Mixteca in Brooklyn that we work a lot with, and they work, they're a nonprofit immigrant organization. And so first it's just trying to have the information and try to tell them, like, this is what we're doing. We are, but the truth is like there's everybody and they themselves, they're like, oh, don't go to, Sunset Park. Like, don't stop.
Yeah.
There's certain people that are stopping people here, and there's certain people there. It's terrifying,
It's terrifying.
And so it's more like just also listening and asking, what can we do? Like, what, do you need to take a different route? Do you need to come at a different time? Do you need to, but literally, and this is a small, these are small businesses, but also some of them are terrified of like their kids going to school, because you hear it in the news, like they're going they're trying to go into schools. And, in Chicago, they didn't let them in. But it's also, they're like, well, this president not only hates immigrants, not only hates specifically, Hispanics, but also has an agenda against democratic states, so they feel like we're going to be targeted more.
Yeah, it's an intensity that is clear. I mean, before we move on to the next topic, I think in the news, for those who maybe subscribe to the new administration, there's a lot of information about who these immigrants are. There's a lot of hateful speech out there, a lot of portrayal of violence and criminality. Who is working for you? Who are these people? What are their backgrounds?
I think that you just hit the nail on the head. My brother, who's a lawyer, who's a law professor in Chicago, he just wrote this article that came out yesterday on Slate, talking about these detention camps, and he has this quote, which I can't.
Yeah, it's okay.
So, Pedro, please forgive me for misquoting you. But talks about how the rhetoric is so much about like these criminals, and they are here illegally, but the majority of the immigrants that they are talking about are not part of a criminal. They don't have criminal activities. They have quite the opposite. They are productive members of society. They are incredibly, incredibly hardworking. They're dedicated, mothers, fathers, siblings, children. Like, they're just the most wonderful, people that were just, they're just trying to have a better life for themselves, for their families, and they contribute to society in only positive ways. Like, it's infuriating, but it's just heartbreaking.
I see it in your face. See it in your face, Fany. I see it in your body language, and you're feeling this. And thank you for sharing. I'm sorry you're going through this right now.
Yeah. I often talk about, I don't know if you have this, like, if you won the lottery, what could you do?
Right.
What do you do? And
why not? We'll ask that question. If you won the lottery,
But I always say, like, I literally had this conversation again with my husband, and I was like, I would get everybody that's been working for us that doesn't have it, like, I would get them their papers.
Yeah.
Or help them out in a way that they could go back. Because that's the thing. It's like just talking to them, like anybody out there that knows anybody, just ask them how they came here.
Yeah.
Just to hear their stories.
That's a really good suggestion if maybe you're on the fence about this topic.
Yeah,
frankly.
Just ask.
Frankly, on the fence.
Like, why are you here? Tell me about
yourself.
And put yourself in their shoes.
Yeah. I'll link to Mixteca. I'll link to the resources in the show notes. Check that out. I'm sure your line is open in socials.
Yeah.
If anyone listening to this who lives in New York and needs information, I'm sure you would respond.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I'm going to transition here, and I want to talk about cookbooks because we've published 3 of your books here. Terrific books. My Sweet Mexico, Mexican Ice Cream and Paletas, and they're favorites of ours. Thank you for doing them.
Thank you.
We love them. They're beautiful. Are there any general ideas or thoughts about what drives you to write books? These books are so singular. And what draws you to writing cookbooks?
So the first cookbook, My Sweet Mexico, was actually the book I kept looking for. When I started out, I was working at a restaurant called Rosa Mexicano. They had just opened in the Upper West Side, and that was my first job as a pastry chef. And so I went back to Mexico, and I said, I'm going to look for these, sort of traditional recipes and try to give them like a modern twist. And then I realized that I hadn't thought of it before then, honestly, but because you kind of take it for granted, that most of the food traditions, and particularly the sweets of Mexico, are part of an oral tradition, meaning they're passed down from generation to generation. There's not a lot of documentation. There's not a lot written about it. And so even in Spanish, and I kept just looking for it because people are very, it translates as jealous. They're very celosos about what, but it's really for a lot of people, it's like their most prized possession.
Yeah.
So they'd rather, literally, I've had people say like, I'd rather go to my, grave and not share this recipe. It's like a legacy, and so that was the first book, and then the second book, paletas, I had started making them.
Yeah.
And then ice cream, I just love ice cream. And Mexican ice cream is not as known as like gelato or, like even ice creams in Argentina.
Oh, but if you go to Mexico, like Guanajuato, I had this incredible ice cream in that town.
What did you have? Do you
Oh,
remember?
I had cinnamon. I had tropical fruit. I had mani.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I love most about Mexican ice creams, whether it's a stand or a store, is when you go, you see at least half, if not more, of the selection, they're water-based, so they're sorbets, because of all the tropical fruits. And I love fruit the way people love chocolate,
Yep.
And so it's just, and you have flavors like queso fresco, and you have, like, it is just, it's not so much about, like the chunks in it or like the mix-ins. It's about like the purity of the flavor, and it's just they're just amazing.
It's
and
amazing.
so I think what drives me is just my love for them, to be honest, and just to be able to want to tell. And my intention with the books that I've written is, there's a lot of stories and a lot of history about our culture. And I want, my intention is, particularly with My Sweet Mexico, was, if you want to not cook anything from it, for you to learn about, history and the culture and be transported.
Yeah.
And in the other way, that if you don't care to read about it and you just want to
make something great,
that it's going to be delicious and it's going to take you there as well. And then the other ones, kind of echo that, but they're just more like sort of more fun. And I just, I love my roots, and it's my way of sharing. It's like I want to share in as many stories and highlight the people that make it magical.
And paletas is one in particular that just such cookable recipes. And
and that's a very fun,
love that book.
Like now it's super fun because I go through them with my son. I'm like, which one do you want to go to?
Oh, fun. That's great.
Yeah.
What about future book plans? You must have something that you're cooking up. What can you say?
Yes. So I have finished my latest book proposal, and we are in the shopping around phase.
Yeah.
And this is, I can't say what it is. I don't want to jinx it, and I don't even know if I'm allowed. But I will say this is the first that will go into the savory crossover. That'll be sweet and savory,
Very cool.
and it has to do with Mexico.
Well, I cannot wait to read that book.
Yes, I'm so excited. And there will be, for sure, a donut.
I would imagine there's a donut.
There's at least a donut recipe.
And you'll have to create one that actually you make at home, because I still think donuts at home is like an impossible task.
I think it's not impossible, but it is. I mean, it's also like very time consuming. There's a lot of waiting that happens.
Yes.
And I think that's the hardest part. But there's also people are afraid of frying.
Yeah.
And so instinctively when you fry, like you want to be away from it. And so you're like, oh my God.
But you have to be watching it.
But the further away, like when you actually throw something, that's when you're going to get burnt.
Yeah.
You have to get close to it.
Well, I can't wait.
We'll make donuts together.
Together. I need a lesson. That's
yes.
what we'll say. Fany, and this is Taste. We ask guests about the discerning taste. So to close this interview, here's a little rapid fire, fast and furious taste check.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I am ready.
The best fruit.
Oh, guanábana.
Oh yeah,
soursop.
So yeah, it's hard to find in America.
Hard to find.
Yeah, Florida has some.
Yeah,
great.
But also mango and cherries and apricots. I mean, I can't.
Yeah, you can't.
I can't limit to one.
You're
but that was
like
the first one that
That's
came to mind. Tamarind.
The worst vegetable.
Oh, easy. Peppers. Bell peppers. Hate them.
Arch enemy in our house.
Arch enemy. Just like in my family, my sister, my brother, and I just equally hate, no matter the color.
What is your typical breakfast?
Oh, I don't have like a typical breakfast, but I'm more of a savory. I love Mexican breakfast. So one of the things I make the most is huevos rancheros.
Yeah.
So it's like a tortilla, although I try not to do it fried, even though traditionally they're fried. And it has like a fried egg. And then I always have salsa. And you just put some salsa
Yeah.
there. That's
Amazing.
it's like a filling. So I try to do sort of the healthier version of it.
Sounds
but
like the
it's
perfect
just-
breakfast.
It's great.
We've all had our versions of that, but
Yeah.
this is pretty
What's
good.
yours?
You're posing it back to me. Well, if you ask, I mean, listen, I'm a Greek yogurt head, but I have some great local yogurts in the Hudson Valley too that I have. So
I was going to ask if
yeah.
you have a particular
strained
brand.
yogurts, but yeah, I think it's like 4-Star Farms. I think that's the one I like, but I typically am a breakfast protein guy.
Yeah. Have you tried White Mustache?
Oh, of course.
I love.
Amazing product.
Oh my God.
Amazing company too.
Yeah.
They've done
Homa,
well for
she's
themselves.
amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great company. Thank you for posing the question back. Wow. Your favorite city outside America to visit for food?
I'm going to say something that is, don't take offense, but I would say outside the United States.
Okay, great.
Into
Into
in
that.
America, it's like, as a Mexican, it's
Yeah,
like,
no, I will reframe it outside North America. So if you're heading on a plane,
if I'm heading on a plane,
yeah,
I mean, I've never been to Southeast Asia, and I'm dying
Yeah,
to go, and
yeah.
India. So those are like sort of two top. I mean, Southeast Asia isn't
yeah,
one country; it's many. But Mexico,
yeah. Of course.
honestly,
Yeah, that's the one. Okay, you are a restaurant person, and you've been here for a while in New York, 20 plus years. Is there a restaurant you wish you could bring back from the dead?
yes. There was this amazing pho place, like Vietnamese restaurant. It was like family owned on Hester Street. I think it was called Kong Lee, if I remember correctly. But that was the first time I tried pho. My friend Alex Reich, I don't know if you know her,
Yes,
she's
yeah.
amazing chef. She took me there, and I love soup. I love broth of any kind, and I never had one that was as good as that one. And I loved. I would love to bring it back. Now you made me sad for it.
It's
It was just amazing.
Good
Not
to
just
remember these restaurants.
just the memory of it, but every time I went, it was just fantastic.
Your favorite cookbook of all time?
Oh, that's hard. There's a woman, her name was Josefina Velázquez de León. She wrote a few cookbooks in Mexico, very sort of home cooking. And I think it was sort of like the first time, like they're meaningful to me in that way that I was like, when I was starting to do research, that I was like, oh, wow. Like she wasn't a chef. She wasn't, she had this book that I think would translate to like economic cooking. So it was like things that were affordable. That was,
Oh, cool.
So I have a few of those that I love. I also love On Food and Cooking.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like a molecular, like at all, but that when I went to cooking school and I read that book for the first time, it was like something like I wouldn't. It's not a cookbook.
It's on food
It's
and
not
cooking. It's its own thing.
It's
like,
not. It's its own thing.
It's a textbook, but it's also
Yeah.
like.
I mean, it's
there's
hard. I
spirit
guess
to
it depends on the categories. That,
No, you answered it well. Last one, your favorite sandwich?
Oh, torta de milanesa. So in Mexico, we have tortas, which are our version of a sandwich. Does that count?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course, it's very much a sandwich.
Yeah,
We drafted
so-
sandwiches probably 2 years ago, and I think the torta was like definitely in the top 5. So very much a sandwich.
Oh, yeah. So it's it's kind of like it's like a crusty roll type thing, but more oval shaped and with black beans, chicken milanesa, which is like a battered and
Cutlet.
and cutlet. Thank you, and cheese and chilies and lettuce, tomato.
Chilies.
Yes,
That's the angle, because you're like, okay, this is like a chicken parm version.
Oh yeah, no.
But no, you say
have to have,
chilies.
like pickled chiles.
See, that's
So you have the acidity of it, and then you have the spice of it.
Damn.
So delicious.
That sounds amazing. Is there one in New York that you could find?
Not off the top of my
Yeah.
head.
Maybe-
There's a place actually not too far from here, Tulcingo del Valle,
Mm-hmm.
that I had one a while back, and
Yeah.
it was pretty good.
Do you make a torta?
Yeah.
Mijo?
No, we don't make it at Mijo, but funnily enough, but we make it at home.
Yeah.
My husband, he had the idea of opening a torta place in New York, but we felt for some reason, even though New Yorkers love sandwiches and they would love a torta, I don't feel like it would.
I have thoughts offline. We'll go.
Yeah.
I have thoughts.
But have you tried a milanesa torta?
No, I haven't. No, never had it.
You see, we need to go searching for
you and I on the road.
Yeah.
We'll bring the recorder along. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Fany Gerson, thank you so much for joining This Is Taste.
Thank you so much for having me.
Eliza, we're back. How are you?
I'm good, Matt. How are you?
I'm great. This is a new concept for us, and I kind of like what we're going to do right now. Now, we talk about so many restaurants that we go to, and we give these recaps and get great feedback, and we will continue to dine out at restaurants. But we wanted to go over some restaurants that we want to go to. Now, we could frame this as a spring preview if we were doing a magazine, but honestly, that's not really what we do. We don't really do previews. And so I think when we were slacking yesterday, I was like, let's just go over like our wish list. And I will say about mine, I am only going off of media and social media. I haven't spoken with any of these chefs. I have a couple that people have told me about it. So like I'm using that with a grain of salt. I cannot vouch for the quality of these restaurants. That is the official warning sign because I've not been.
But yet we want to go.
We want to go for a lot of reasons too. Broadly speaking, Eliza, let me ask you, how do you, when you look at like restaurants as a whole in New York or otherwise, what makes you excited about a restaurant?
I think there's a couple different factors. Certainly if it's a style of food that I just love and I'm drawn to, or if it's a chef that I've liked their other work or they've cooked at other places that I'm interested in. I think the location matters a lot, whether it's easy for me to get to or it's in like kind of a destination neighborhood that I would plan a whole day of eating around. And then, if people are talking about it, if people whose taste I respect or friends of mine are really enjoying their meals out somewhere, I think that's probably the thing that would make me the most excited to go somewhere.
Yeah, me too. I think like when you hear about it like firsthand, like especially in our studio if we're talking to guests or just in general, I love that. I really lean into media a bit, maybe too much. I'm reading the heat lists of various publications. I just have tremendous respect for our peers who are doing the work and promoting or covering restaurant openings. So I'm always looking. I'm reading the blogs and reading the publications, but also cuisine is great. I love when you say that. I try to think about restaurants that I'm familiar with the cuisine for some of them. But if there's a restaurant that is doing something way outside of my comfort zone or my knowledge, I will absolutely go there just to try it. So that's how I look at it too. So
should we get into it?
Let's get into the list. What's your first one?
My first one, I really want to go to Zimmy's in the West Village. It's a new French place, which I know West Village French might not seem groundbreaking, but I've just heard great things from my friends who have been there, especially my friends who work in the hospitality space. I think it's been one of the most talked about openings. The chef, Maxime Pradet, I'm sorry for my French.
It's really good. I think you nailed it.
He's ex-Ignacio Matos group. He was the CDC at Lodi and he was at Flora Bar before that. But he's really inspired by his family's home-style Southern French cooking. And I think it just seems like a really cozy and thoughtful place. And I've just heard great things from my friends who work in hospitality. I think it's like the most talked about place right now.
I love that. It's on my list. Not this list, but in my Google Docs. It's in there.
In the Google Maps,
Google Maps. My first one is Golden Hof. Now, I have been the biggest fan of Golden Diner and Sam Yu, and this restaurant is the extension of the Golden Diner universe. It's a Korean Hof, which is kind of a chicken and beer restaurant. That's like more of the traditional definition. But this restaurant, from what I can tell, again, I've not been there, is really doing some really innovative cooking around this kind of paradigm. It's located in Rock Center, like steps from Saturday Night Live studio and NBC Studios. I feel those guys have a new after-work hang. And what I like about this restaurant was originally Sam Yu's parents' restaurant. It was New York kimchi, and it was like a restaurant and a kimchi shop. And I remember stopping by and it being really cool. And being in this neighborhood that doesn't have a lot of Korean restaurants. And then just looking at the menu, I'm really, really excited. I love the way that these two pancakes are articulated. One is a crispy chive and the other is a crispy bacon with perilla ranch. Now, crispy is like for both of them. They're like crispy pancake for both of them. And That is the most important element of a Korean pancake, in my opinion. They do 4 styles of Korean fried chicken. That's the twice fried. Everyone's had Korean fried chicken, very crispy. They do the traditional soy sauce and gochujang, so you have those 2 flavors that you can get pretty much anywhere. But the real wild cards are they do a Szechuan peppercorn and a General Tso's. So how General Tso's fried chicken is amazing. And I also like the tteokbokki carbonara. That's a dish that I've had around the country, so I can't wait to try theirs. And on the drink side, they're doing a naengmyeon martini, which I don't drink alcohol, but maybe they can do it at NA. Love the idea of naengmyeon broth being articulated into a cold beverage. And they're doing a Jeju margarita, which is with Blanco tequila and tangerines. And super, super smart having tangerine juice in a cocktail like that. It's called Golden Hof. Can't wait to go.
Yeah, I'm a big Golden Diner fan, and I love having things in Midtown that I can go to on my way back to Brooklyn after work.
No doubt. I love that. What's your next one?
I really want to go to Sun's, which is the wine bar run by Sunny Lee, who did the Banchan by Sunny pop-up, which I think had a big following around New York. I certainly always loved going to that. She also was cooking at Achilles Heel most recently. I just like a wine bar concept that's not tinned fish.
Yeah.
No disrespect to the sardines, but I really want to eat things like roasted yellow wax beans with peanut samjang and persimmon. Her hot toddy sounds really great to me. It's made with soju, yuzu, and lemon. It's a small space in the kind of lower Manhattan, Chinatown area that just seems really cozy. And I, always love supporting independent chefs who have a new place that's opening. This is in partnership with the guys from Parcel. So they have a really nice kind of pared down wine list. And it's just a place I want to go to.
And it's called Sun's?
Sun's.
Love that.
Sunn.
I'm absolutely going there this year. I cannot wait. My next one is a restaurant that has gotten a lot of press, at least in social media circles. I've seen it. I've heard it mentioned on podcasts, on food shows, and other shows. It's called Smithereens. Have you been there yet?
I have not been there yet, but I have been hearing about it also. And the chef there used to be at Penny and Claude. Yep. So I've eaten at some of those restaurants before.
Well, Smithereens is a New England-inspired restaurant, and really, it's they have a lobster roll. Sure, they have the lobster roll, and it looks pretty great. What I'm reading is the seafood restaurant. From the menu I read in early March, and they switch it often, there was no non-fish protein on the menu, so it's a really, really hardcore fish menu. And I love that they're adding specials to it. There was a collar, I think it was a hamachi collar that was stamped on the side of the menu, and I got some press. This hamachi collar is probably New York's most famous hamachi collar. But really, I like this restaurant. It's in the East Village. It's on 9th and 1st, and they're doing cured fluke with rhubarb. They're doing these abalone skewers, which I'd love to see abalone done through their lens and see how they interpret it. And they have these big mains. They do a cod and clams and a big roasted monkfish. Seems like the beverage program is absolutely on point. This is a small little East Village restaurant. It's called Smithereens. I can't wait to visit.
Yeah, I've been wanting to go to Smithereens.
Yeah, and the name is amazing.
It's fun to say.
It's fun to say. It's a great, I would say a band with like maybe 1.5 hits from the 80s. I apologize if there's more hits, but I get it on Sirius XM quite a bit. There's a couple great songs.
I feel like we were stuck in an era of like old-fashioned first names for a long time for restaurants that were opening, and I like that we're moving into the onomatopoeia school of names.
What's your next one?
My next one is Taqueria El Chato, which opened in Greenpoint a couple months ago, I believe. It's from Chris Reyes and Gerardo Alcaraz. They do Aldama and also the bar Pony Boy in the Greenpoint area. And Shirley went to have tacos there and sent me a photo of her plate. And I just was like, damn, I need to eat these tacos. The al pastor, the lengua, the mushroom taco that she got, which I think would be even better as a quesadilla. It just looks really delicious and solid. And I love that Greenpoint is kind of becoming a taco neighborhood. There's like what's that? I love that Greenpoint is becoming a taco neighborhood. There's Ese Taco. There's obviously Taqueria Ramirez and Marisco Submarino, like further up on Franklin. So I think this is going to be my next entry into the taco game is Taqueria El Chato.
Amazing call, and I love that you're on the taco beat always. You're bringing new names to the podcast.
It's a lifestyle, you know?
It's a lifestyle. Well, my next one, I'm heading over to Los Angeles, and the name of the restaurant is Rasaruma. Tejal Rao had mentioned it on our previous chat, and I had not really heard too much about it, and I did some reading, and this is definitely my next stop in Los Angeles. It's a restaurant from the chef Johnny Lee. He was at Pearl River Deli, which was an incredible place that I got to go to, before the pandemic, I think it was. The definition of Rasaruma is flavor house in Malay, and according to Eater, quote, Lee prepares a Chinese-Malaysian menu with Indian and Indonesian influences. Really, really speaks to me, this style of cooking. Dishes include Wagyu beef chief rendang and crispy rice cakes with preserved daikon. I also like the pedigree. It's from the team behind Found Oyster and their restaurants and really terrific operators there. The name is Rasaruma. I cannot wait to go.
I love that you're having an LA rec on the show.
I got another one coming.
Okay, I'm going to stick in New York for my last rec just because there's so many places here I want to eat at. Cafe Kestrel and Red Hook. Have you been there yet?
Oh my gosh, no, I haven't. Absolutely not.
I have been wanting to go to this neighborhood since it opened last summer. This is, I think, an example of press influencing a decision, which there were a couple great write-ups in The New Yorker with Hannah Goldfield, I believe, and then Priya did a review in The Times. I've had friends that have been going, and it just seems like kind of a dreamy, perfect neighborhood restaurant, unfortunately in a neighborhood that is not the easiest to get to from mine and doesn't really have subway access in general. So I think that's what's been keeping me from it. But I would love to have a Red Hook day. Maybe I'll go to Pioneer Works and then go there afterwards.
Great.
Or I'll wait until it's nice out and it's a nice bike ride. I just think there's so many things on the menu that sound delicious to me. They have an applesauce ice cream sundae, which is inspired by a German dish that I just think sounds perfect. They do fried halloumi, but it's not maybe the more traditional fried halloumi. It's these crispy batons that are coated in wildflower honey and lots of spices. They have a crab salad on the menu right now with chicory, grapefruit, and creme fraiche.
Oh, wow.
That sounds really good to me. All things I want to eat this time of year. And also, the people running it are cool. The chef is Dennis Spina, who was at Metrograph Commissary most recently. And then Amanda McMillan, who's the managing director at Four Horsemen, is on the drinks side as well. And I have a lot of friends in the industry who are really excited that Amanda was opening her own project. Also, they have a Watership Down reference on the menu. There's just a lot of things going on that I think seem special.
Well, speaking of Red Hook, this is one of my picks, but I got to go to Pitt's, Jeremy Solomon's new place.
Oh.
It's on my list as well. It's not mentioned in the prep, but that's one that I'm looking forward to. Red Hook. Take a bike ride over.
I really do love Red Hook. It does feel like you're kind of leaving New York City and going somewhere more coastal.
Yeah, well, I'm leaving New York on my next one. I'm still in Los Angeles. And I finally did the work and prepped and researched Dunsmore. Now, I've been hearing about Brian Dunsmore's restaurant in Glass Hill Park for a long time, and I read a bunch of stuff about it. I was like, I gotta get into this vibe because I kept thinking it was a Southern restaurant, and that feels like it's not quite fair. And I think someone on the show, I can't remember who, was like, it's actually not that. And this is a restaurant I need to go to in Los Angeles. Brian Dunsmore is switching his menu all the time, and yes, there is a firmly planted red beans and rice on the menu, so I could say that would be maybe a Southern or that's a specific style of cuisine. But really, this menu reads like a chef who just loves cooking meat and loves creativity. And there's a mushroom-crusted pork chop with smoked lard on there. There is a bluefish tuna. There's a bluefish toast. There's a bluefin tuna toast and a chicory salad with white cheddar dressing and apples. And it just seems like these are all winter produce. He's cooking with the seasons. And just the people in my life who I respect most in Los Angeles are like, Dunsmore is my favorite restaurant, one of my top 5. So on my list of places to go, it's not a new place, but it's Dunsmore in Los Angeles.
I love the LA Rex from you because now when I go back home, I'll have more places to go to.
I feel that's our country's greatest food city. Just said it under my breath. You know what? I'm going to come back to New York and just say a final word. And I'm not going to go to this restaurant right away because I think it has some work to do. But it's a little restaurant called Babbo. Have you been to Babbo?
No.
So for obvious reasons, I have not gone to Babbo for a very long time. Before I think I started writing about food, Tamar, when we were just dating, took me there and it was incredible. First time I ever had, I think beef cheeks was at Babbo. And it's an iconic restaurant that has a very troubled past. And what has happened is that Steven Starr bought it. Steven Starr, restaurateur of Philadelphia and New York and around the country. And so it has new ownership, but also most importantly, it has a new chef, and his name is Mark Ladner. Mark Ladner was the chef who started Del Posto and won 4 stars in the New York Times. It's the first Italian restaurant ever to get 4 stars. Brooks Headley was doing the pastry there. Del Posto, a real legend. Mark's been kind of doing his own thing for a while and hasn't had a restaurant in New York. Now he is the executive chef running the kitchen at Babbo. This will be a very buzzy restaurant when it opens. There's going to be a lot of questions about what is Mark Ladner doing with this menu in this historical space. And I want to go, but I want to give it time. I don't want to go like right away. I feel like it needs to, settle and figure out, are they going to play the same music and have the same decor? Are they rebooting the whole interior? I mean, all these questions have not been answered in the little bit of reporting that's been about it, but it's on my list.
Well, I guess speaking of restaurants that we want to give a little time before we visit, I do have one more to mention.
Oh, cool. Great. I love it.
Is that my friend Ignacia Valdez is the new executive chef at Tokyo Record Bar.
Oh, wow.
I stopped by last night for a Casa Dragones, drinks event, and it was her very first night of service, and she had already started to change the menu, and I just had a couple bites of things that I would say are very much like classic Nachi style of food. She was helping Jeremiah and Fabian open Bar Contra most recently, and this was her first time as executive chef, which I'm so excited about. And she did a oyster with a Meyer lemon granita on top for that kind of cool textural contrast.
So smart, yeah.
That kind of thing I would say is very much her style of food. And selfishly, as her friend, I'm just very excited to see her get her own restaurant. So that will be something I'm going to in a couple weeks, and maybe we'll catch up about it on the show.
Yeah, I would love to have her in the studio and hear that conversation. Tokyo Record Bar, that is.
Tokyo Record Bar.
It's a cool place too. As the name suggests, there's good music there too.
Good music, good drinks, and a great chef in the kitchen.
Well, I hope we can make it to some of these restaurants and maybe include it in 3 Things or just on the show. Maybe have some of the chefs on, and we'll definitely give an update once we end up going.
Yeah, I love manifesting all of these future meals to come with you.
It's great. Well, thanks for sharing, Eliza.
You too.
This is Taste is hosted and produced by Eliza Barbanel and me, Matt Rodbar. The show is edited by lead producer Clayton Gumbert and supervised by Pat Stango, Director of Media Production and Development at Penguin Random House. Thanks to Shalia Harris and the production team at Penguin Random House. Theme music by Steve Rydell. Logo and guest illustrations by Ellie Skurzat. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter to keep updated on all cool things in the world of taste.